Do you ever stick to the same daily routine with your cat, thinking it keeps them comfortable? It feels like you're doing the right thing, and most people don't realize anything could be off. But what if the truth is those привычки are quietly confusing your cat without you noticing? There are no clear signs, and it happens more often than you think, which means you might be doing this right now. Here are 7 daily routines that may be affecting your cat. 1. Talking to your cat in different tones. Every day you walk past your cat and say something in a distracted flat voice. Then later you switch to a playful high tone, and at night you barely speak at all. And it feels normal because you're just reacting to your day and your mood. Most people do this without thinking twice, and it even feels like your cat should just adapt. But what's actually happening is much more subtle, because cats don't rely on words. They rely on consistency of sound and emotional signals. And when that tone keeps shifting without pattern, it quietly creates confusion in their nervous system. Without you realizing it, over time your cat stops associating your voice with safety and starts treating it as unpredictable input. That's where the problem starts, because unpredictability in nature often signals risk. So small signs appear first: less response, less approach. A slight hesitation, and eventually emotional distance builds, as if your cat is unsure who you are in different moments. Imagine living with someone whose voice changes meaning every time they speak. You'd stop trusting the signal too, and from your cat's perspective, that's exactly what it feels like. So the simple rule is this: keep a consistent, calm tone when you speak to your cat, so your voice always means the same thing to them. 2. Feeding your cat at slightly different times. Every day, there's a quiet moment in your home when your cat starts circling, lingering near the kitchen, watching you more closely than usual. And you might not think much of it because feeding happens daily anyway, just not always at the exact same time. And it seems harmless since your schedule changes and your cat still gets food in the end. Most people assume flexibility doesn't matter as long as the need is met, but that's where it begins to shift in a way you don't see, because cats are deeply wired around predictability and timing, and what's actually happening is their internal clock starts losing its anchor without you noticing. Their body prepares for food at expected intervals, releasing anticipation signals, digestive readiness, even emotional focus. And when that moment keeps moving, that cycle is interrupted again and again, slowly creating a low-level tension that builds over time. At first it looks like impatience, then increased vocalizing, then restlessness, and in some cases even overeating or refusal patterns start forming, not because the food is wrong, but because the rhythm is. And from your cat's perspective, it feels like living in a world where essential events happen randomly, never fully predictable. So the simple shift is this: keep feeding times as consistent as possible each day to give your cat a stable rhythm they can rely on. 3. Leaving dry food out all day without thinking. The bowl sits there, always full, always available, and it gives a sense of comfort because your cat can eat whenever they want. No pressure, no hunger. It feels like you're making life easier and more natural for them, and most people assume this is the most caring approach. But the shift happens quietly in the background where you don't see it, because what seems like freedom is actually removing a structure your cat's body depends on. And what's actually happening is their natural cycle of hunger, eating, and digestion starts to blur. Their system never fully resets. Energy intake becomes scattered instead of purposeful, and over time this begins to affect how their body processes food and hydration. At first it's subtle, a bit less enthusiasm for meals, slightly irregular eating patterns, then slowly weight changes, reduced activity, even strain on internal organs begins to build without obvious signs, because the body is constantly working instead of moving through clear phases. And from your cat's perspective, it's like living in a state where the signal to eat is never fully clear, never fully satisfied, just ongoing and unfocused. So the simple adjustment is this: create defined meal times instead of constant access to food, so your cat's body can return to a natural, balanced rhythm. 4. Loud homes and constant background noise stress your cat. The room feels alive with sound, a TV playing in the background, music drifting through the space, voices overlapping, maybe even a phone buzzing here and there. And to you it feels normal, even comforting, like the house has energy and presence, something that makes it feel less empty, But within that same space, your cat is experiencing something entirely different because their world is built on far sharper hearing and constant environmental scanning, and what blends into the background for you never truly fades for them. Every sound stays active, every shift matters. So what seems like a calm atmosphere is actually a stream of signals their body keeps processing without pause. At first, it shows up in small ways: a slight ear flick, a sudden pause, choosing to sit farther away. Then slowly it turns into avoidance of certain rooms, reduced relaxation, lighter sleep, because their nervous system never fully settles. And over time, that constant stimulation builds into quiet stress that most people never connect to noise at all. From your cat's perspective, it's like trying to rest in a place where something is always happening, just out of your control. So the simple adjustment is this: create at least one consistently quiet space in your home where your cat can fully relax without constant background noise. 5. Picking your cat up without letting them choose. There's a quiet kind of comfort in reaching down, lifting your cat into your arms, holding them close for a moment during the day. It feels natural, almost like a small expression of care woven into your routine, and most people see it as harmless affection, something that strengthens the bond. But over time, that pattern starts to shift in a way that isn't immediately visible, because what feels like connection to you can slowly remove a sense of control for your cat, and that's where the imbalance begins. Cats rely heavily on choice, on deciding when to approach, when to retreat, when to engage, and when that decision is repeatedly taken away, even gently, it creates a low-level tension in their body that builds gradually. At first it's subtle, a slight stiffness when lifted, a delayed relaxation, then it turns into quicker escapes, less willingness to stay close, and eventually a quiet avoidance of being approached altogether, not because they don't want contact, but because the contact no longer feels predictable or safe on their terms. And from their perspective, it becomes a situation where closeness happens to them, not with them. So the simple adjustment is this: let your cat initiate most physical contact, and only pick them up when they clearly signal comfort with it. 6. Misreading your cat's signals during petting moments. It's widely believed that a cat who stays close, purrs, and doesn't move away is fully enjoying every second of attention, and that idea feels natural because the signals seem clear on the surface. But the truth is much quieter than that, because what you're seeing is not always what your cat is actually feeling, and this is where misunderstanding begins to build. Without you realizing it, cats communicate discomfort in very subtle ways. Small tail movements, a slight shift in their ears, a pause in their breathing, and most people overlook these signals because they expect something more obvious. But cats rarely escalate immediately. They tolerate first, they adjust, they wait. And that tolerance is often mistaken for enjoyment. Over time, this creates a pattern where your cat learns that their signals are not being understood, so they either withdraw earlier or suddenly react stronger than expected, which feels confusing from your side, but from theirs, it's a build-up of ignored communication. Imagine trying to say something quietly over and over, until eventually you have to say it louder, just to be heard. And that's the point where many people think the behavior changed, when in reality, it's been there all along. So the simple shift is this: start paying attention to the smallest changes in your cat's body, and stop interaction at the first sign of discomfort instead of waiting for a clear reaction. 7. Ignoring. When your cat quietly stops engaging. This is the one most people never question because it looks like independence. Your cat spends more time alone, stops following you as much, sits in the same spot for hours, and it feels like they've simply grown more spookily or self-sufficient, something that even seems healthy from a distance. But this is often where the deepest shift has already happened, because what looks like calm is sometimes withdrawal that built slowly over everything we've talked about. Small moments of confusion, missed signals, disrupted routines, all adding up without any obvious sign. And what's actually happening inside your cat is not peace but adaptation. They stop expecting, stop initiating, stop trying to communicate in ways that weren't understood, and over time that turns into a quieter, flatter emotional state. Less curiosity, less engagement, less connection. And the hardest part is that it doesn't look like a problem, because cats are naturally subtle and they hide discomfort extremely well, so most people don't realize anything changed at all. But from your cat's perspective, it's like slowly learning that interaction doesn't always lead to clarity or safety. So they choose distance instead, and this is where everything comes together, because it's not one big mistake. It's the accumulation of small ones that reshape how your cat experiences you. So the simple rule is this: when your cat becomes quieter, don't assume they need less from you. Take it as a signal to become more present, more consistent, and more aware. Because connection with a cat doesn't fade suddenly. It fades quietly when it's not understood. Thanks for watching. I really appreciate you being here. Did this change how you see your cat's behavior even a little? And what's your cat's name? I'd love to know. If this helped, you can like the video and subscribe for more insights like this.